This week's topic is the whispers of meditation, finding center within our duality. So on the show, I talk about what meditation should and shouldn't look like. Here's a hint. There is no right or wrong. A few highlights from this episode. I talk about how my own meditation practice has evolved over my life and all the different tools that I hold in my tool belt. I talk about why finding center is a much better way to describe what meditation is. And then I also talk about how we can use our triggers to find center. And with that comes a few triggering topics, including my take on Roe versus Wade. I also take time to discuss the collective energy. I dive deeper into the update that I gave for episode 9 with my interview with Brett McKee. And I talk about why this particular portal that we're within and all of its triggers are so important for the upcoming years ahead. I also include, by popular request, a bonus episode. Finally, I have a guided meditation for all of you. It's about 15 minutes long, and I guide you through your body to ground you in and then help you let go and enter the field. You are listening to the School of Whispers podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie, and this is my space to get real, open, and weird about my life experiences as a psychic, medium, energy healer, and student of Chinese medicine. On the show, I'll be sharing my healing journey and the concepts I've learned along the way, and I'll be having guests on talking about the same sort of thing. I am so happy you're here, and I hope this show leaves you feeling inspired and empowered to learn how to listen to the whispers of your own body and spirit. Let's get into the show. So to bring you here to sit with me right now, I am sitting at a little picnic table at the villa that I'm staying in with my family in Tuscany, and I'm sitting underneath this gorgeous tree of these, I think they might be roses. No, because roses grow out of bushes. They're beautiful, delicate pink flowers just hanging over my head. It's one half of my family is on this car tour that the other half of my family, well, really my twin sister and I, could not be fucked going to. So it's really nice because it's a really easygoing, smooth, quiet day. And I've been feeling a little drained, not gonna lie. They say that when what is it? It's you think that you are spiritually enlightened and over your trauma and your own bullshit, and then you go and spend a week with your family, and then you realize, oh, never mind, I got a lot of work to do. And I think today's day 6, and don't get me wrong, we all love each other. We are also all really big personalities, and it's just like, I mean, if you have a family that's loud and crazy and loving and a lot, you know exactly what I'm talking about. While we've been building all these beautiful memories and having all of these silly times together, I've been triggered, I've been pushed, I've been forced to find center. And speaking of center, that's really what this topic is about. I mean, I guess another word for it could be meditation, but I feel like meditation has this connotation of being cross-legged in like a white pure robe with your head shaved, making a mudra, connecting your pointer and your thumb and just going Om, and being the complete image of peace and tranquility and zen, and having a completely perfect thoughtless mind. And that's really just not it. Those of us who aren't familiar with meditation have these beliefs of what it should be and what it should look like. I have so many people come to me all the time telling me how bad they are at meditation. because, again, they have this image of what it should be. And I have gone through, at the risk of tooting my own horn, I've always been good at meditation since I was little. And especially now, because of the way that I defined meditation is finding center, I would much rather that the world goes around, and rather than being like, so do you have a meditation practice? Did you meditate this morning? I would much rather they would say, hey, do you have a practice of finding center? How have you found center today? And maybe it's the double earth in my chart. Maybe it's something, it's lifetimes of practice, but it's just always been very easy for me to return home and to find center. And I will define center in a little bit, but I do want to just say that my centering practice has definitely changed over the years. When I was little, it was through artwork and being in nature. It definitely still is. Being in nature, I notice that when I'm outside, it's completely enhanced. And then it kind of started to segue into more of a movement meditation. It started with yoga and then kind of segued into weight training. And unfortunately, when in the first couple of years of my weight training, I mean, there were some days where it really was a time to be with my body and to honor my body and to, again, find home. But sometimes it came out of a place of lack. And and I mean this lack as in not feeling skinny enough, pretty enough. I used to think that my twin is Gabby. She's gorgeous. She's a beautiful woman, and she is very vivacious and flirty. And growing up, I've just been a little bit more, I guess you could say, introverted. I remember telling people, kind of explaining how we are and saying, oh yeah, I know I may come off as warm and friendly, but my sister's very touchy. Sometimes, she's the first to go and hug somebody. And to be honest, as loving as I am, I don't like hugging everyone. I don't like hugging just anyone at first meeting. I think it's like a personal energy sort of thing. And she in the past has always made me kind of look like a cold fish. But now that I'm more comfortable with myself, I have, my other ways of showing warmth and love and kindness to others. But I used to think that, if I'm not, the pretty one, because everybody wanted to be Gabby's friend or wanted to be her boyfriend, whatever it was. At least that's how I viewed it as a kid. And I thought, well, if I can't be the pretty one, maybe I can be the fit one. I could have the one with the nice body. And I can't believe I'm telling you guys this right now. I mean, I just spent my whole morning really doing acupuncture, listening to an awesome podcast, hanging my clothes on a clothesline, which was so satisfying, way more satisfying, and outdoors in a little field on the place that we're staying. So much more satisfying than hanging my stuff on my clothing rack in the spare bathroom in my apartment. So I'm feeling very grounded and sure of myself and loving and open-hearted. So maybe that's why I'm sharing this. But by this point, I very much am past this not enoughness and this comparisonitis. And I can say from a very centered, true place without any ego that I know I am beautiful because I know the being that I am. But that not enoughness really did start to infiltrate my movement meditation. And it wasn't really until kind of the end, maybe mid 2020, when I would hear my guides say, if you go and work out right now, your body's going to freak the fuck out. And I really would feel this, my heart rate starting to climb, my head starting to feel a bit light and dizzy. And it would force me to sit with myself rather than walk down to the gym and force myself to sweat and move, I instead would take a bath or literally just sit in stillness. Or now especially it's qigong. And that's really been kind of the evolution of my meditation practice, is just kind of listening to what it is that I need most. I do segue between movement, stillness, energy work, journaling, bath time. It's walking. I love walking meditations. It's really up to me to just honor. I have a whole tool belt, and yeah, it's just up to me to honor what comes up. And sometimes meditation doesn't have to be this designated time of doing something to find this mindlessness state of flow. Sometimes it comes out of nowhere. Like if you're cooking, or I used to nanny this baby Trent, and when I would feed him and right before his nap, that would be the most beautiful meditation, because I was fully there with him, and he had just with his big beautiful eyes staring up at me looking down at him, and just all my senses were just switched on, being there for this child and just kind of basking in his pure light. Parents, you all have, I know it's hard. Actually, I don't know, because I'm not a parent, but I understand, I empathize how difficult it can be. But really, you guys have this perfect little source of centeredness by having a child in your life. Because I remember baby Trent would look up at me, and I would just think, how is it that someone so pure and good and loving is looking at me this way? And this was in 2020. I was still really struggling with really just baseline liking myself. And so that was just incredibly healing for me, but it was also surprising. It made me realize, okay, if someone like this can look at me with such adoration and such light in their eyes, like reflecting off of just my mirror image, then I must be good too. I must be this good too. So finding center, what does that mean? It can be different for everyone, because it is very much based on perspective. While perspective is everything, not every perspective is the one thing. For me, finding center is literally this feeling where I connect, because my background in Chinese medicine, and if you've heard the show before, then you know what the Dantian is. Dantien. I think it's also called Tantian. If you want to Google that, because I'm not going to get into the definition of it. It's pure source of life force energy within your body. And so when I want to find center, I tune in with that area. I either put my hands over it, or I bring my internal vision into this space. And then I call upon my guides, ancestors, and higher self. And first, I ask for help finding center, and then I say thank you for helping me find center. And I also give gratitude for myself, because I really am, this amalgamation of all of those things into one body, one source here. What I search for is this feeling of acceptance. Full acceptance of everything I am and everything I'm not. And a deep comfort in knowing that I can accept my current state. I choose, and even if I don't even get there in the meditation of actual full acceptance, I still repeat again and again, I choose to accept my current state. Thank you for helping me accept my current state. And sometimes it's just repeating again, I love you, 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 I love you. And that's really just kind of when I'm alone, that personal internal state of finding center. But like I said, it comes out of nowhere. Oh, before I go any further, I do want to say that I will be including a bonus episode kind of attached to this theme of a guided meditation. But I do want this one to just be something that you can just take some mental notes, hearing my own perspective, and hopefully I can shift your perspective or validate the one you already have. And with this finding of center, it comes this discussion of duality. When I was in Qigong about 20 minutes ago, just listening in, I I have always been someone who asks a lot of questions, and after ayahuasca, one thing that they repeated to me again and again is you do not ask the questions. Your job is to listen. And so that's rather than in my meditations, I would just ask questions. And I realize now that wasn't finding center, that was channeling and sitting in communication, which is totally awesome and wonderful, but it definitely requires either before or after that return to center. But as I was listening to my guides, they mentioned it is important I drop in a couple of tangents, I guess I would say, on the current state of duality that's relevant to the state of the world right now. The topic that has been on my mind really since this morning when my twin mentioned it, because honestly, I don't really give these sorts of things a lot of space. I will think about it, I will feel on it, and then I need to move on, because if I stay stuck on a certain thought loop or topic, I know what it does to my life force energy, my chi, my prana. It drains it. But the topic is the Roe versus Wade. And I'm mentioning this again because I believe this, well, because my guides told me, and as long as one of my favorite, she's a shaman, she's a podcaster, she's a lot of things, and her name is Allison Charles, and something that she says, and her podcast is called Ceremony Circle, if you want to check her out. And something that she says often, if spirit and I, if God and I are good, then it's all right with me. It's all is well with me. And when I hear the call, I have spent way too many times in my life refusing to listen. And now I have built this beautiful life of listening to the call, and so that is what I will do. So that's partly why, and I think perhaps this discussion is going to perhaps maybe be a meditation for you, because every time we're triggered, it's an opportunity to return to center. Before I dive in, one of my favorite quotes by Rumi that has been a massive game changer for me: out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. And what that means to me is the field is the center. The field is where we have come from. It's where we return home to. And it's the place that we crave. Do you ever feel homesick for something that in your home, you're with your family, you're surrounded by your loved ones, yet you still feel this, like there's a little piece missing? I know before kind of my big spiritual awakening, I used to feel that all the time. And it was when I started to sit in communion with my guides, my ancestors, and my higher self. And when I first heard somebody mention the word source after years of growing up in Catholic school and just not fully resonating with their ideas of God and heaven and hell and earth, after years of that, and I hear about this concept of source and collective consciousness and reincarnation and all of these things, finally, I realized it a couple of days ago. I haven't felt homesick. I haven't felt that homesickness. So that field is where we belong. It's where when we do finally reach that state of meditation, of zero thoughts, of just complete zen. Because while that isn't necessarily what meditation has to be. It is a place you can reach, and it's mind-blowingly beautiful. It's not something you can describe. It is only something that you can feel. And it feels like returning home to love and who you truly are. And even then, I think I'm not doing that description justice. So the world of ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, well, I believe that this duality is an intrinsic part of our third dimensional existence. Either you're alive, in terms of 3D, you're either alive or you're dead. You're either a human or you're a plant or you're a creature, and so on and so forth. But that's not the only dimension that Earth carries. It's not the only dimension that we exist on. I like the Inca point of view on this, and the way they put it is there's 3 worlds. There's the lower world, the world of spirit guides and creatures, and then there's the middle world where humans exist, and then there's the upper world of higher dimensional beings. But I really believe that there is an infinite number of dimensions that we exist on. And within these higher dimensions, duality no longer matters. The confines of your physical form doesn't matter. You can become the flower, the bird, the wind. Rather than being one drop in the ocean, you are the ocean in a drop. So when we start to place these limitations of ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, of left and right, of right or wrong, of liberal and conservative, we start to confine ourselves to this third dimension. And it's a very uncomfortable place to be. It is not the sole dimension that we exist on. And I know with a lot of this stuff, I might be sounding like a broken record here, or I might be really driving this home for you. I really hope it's the latter. But that's what I want to preface this little tangent on how I view the Roe versus Wade situation. And again, to preface this, I am not an expert on the subject. Like I mentioned before, I don't give my mind a ton of space to go down rabbit holes on this topic. Usually when things like this come in to, the collective, what I choose to do is to sit with my emotions. I purposely for days did not go on Instagram. I've been in Italy and I haven't, and while my family has data, I have chosen, that's the one thing I love about vacation is I don't turn on my data. And I've chosen not to scroll on Instagram for days now. I think this morning was the first time in 5 days that I really just went on and stayed on Instagram for like 30 to 60 minutes, whatever it was. So I choose to sit with myself, and then I choose to tune in to hear what do the higher consciousness pieces of me, what do they think of this topic? I have been warned by my guides of this, that this summer is going to, every summer I feel like there is something new, some new presented topic that is purposeful and divisive in creating, what did my friend call it? Oh, yes, this this fucking giant emotional energy harvest. The only really thing I'm conscious of right now in my memory is Black Lives Matter. That was an emotional harvest for all of us. That was a really difficult time. We were also in the throes of a pandemic lockdown. So, of course, we all were extremely emotional to begin with when this thing happened. But what I've come to realize more and more, that it's not all that. If we can take a step back and look at this from a wide stance, almost sometimes I like to pretend that I'm sitting on a star looking down at Earth and looking at us from this macro vibrational level. In a lot of ways, I believe the point of these things is to force us into a place of facing our own duality within. And either we face it and we hold on tight to it, whether you believe that, whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, can choose to latch on to that duality and run with it, and to feel triggered by anyone whose opinion doesn't match yours, anyone whose vibration doesn't match yours. Or you can take a step back and choose not to engage, and to choose to find your own version of center within this storm. When I'm with my family, side tangent from this side tangent, when I'm with my family and I'm really struggling to not step into old patterns and beliefs, I visually, I close my eyes and I imagine I have a little fanny pack that's like a tool belt around my waist, around my dantian, of all the things that help me find center. And I take a moment, I close my eyes, and I ask, okay, what do I need right now to find my center? And that in itself is a meditation. And I don't want you to think that I'm telling you that your opinion is toxic or invalid. You, of course, are so entitled to your own opinion. I know I have mine. I personally, how I feel, to be real and honest with you, with the listener who I call in every time before I start a podcast, whose energy I feel sitting right in front of me, my friend, my fellow being of light, is that I don't like the government having control over anyone's body. I don't like the government having control over really many things in my life. I don't feel comfortable with a strong government grip presence in my life. I just don't. And that's just how I feel. And I also believe that while personally, I've never had an abortion, I don't think I ever could have had one. Who the fuck am I to say what someone can and can't do? I could never imagine. I mean, for example, I don't shave much. I haven't shaved my armpits in like 2 months now. And everyone else all the other women in my family, they do. And I guess this might be a very benign example, but how could I have the audacity to look at them and go, ew, you shave? What are you, part of the patriarchy? Or some, judgmental bullshit like that. None of them have looked at my armpits and said, what is wrong with you, Stephanie? You need to be like us. And again, I know that's a much more benign statement than this discussion of what the individual on each side of the conversation. It's a topic of, for one side, for the pro-life, it is a discussion of life or death. And for the other side, it is a discussion of freedom versus control. And while I do have that initial reaction that I just told you guys of how I feel, when I sit with it all and find center, the individual on the other side of this argument, who I guess with mine, because freedom is so important to me, but life is so important to me. So when I see the other person who's celebrating this overturn, I'm sorry, I might trigger you in saying this, but I don't hate them. I don't dislike them. I don't think that they are a bad person or wrong, because what they believe is this is the protection of a life. Granted, the big, chunky entity body that is the government, I don't think that to them, I don't know if that is the case, but I am moving myself from that macro decision-making body to the micro, to the individual on the other side of me. And I don't hate them for believing that they are protecting a life. I hear about people wanting to physically injure the Supreme Court justices who were a part of this decision. But guys, these are human beings, and they are no less human than I am. They are no less human than you are. And neither side is deserving of a crucifixion over what they believe or how they feel in the decisions we make. As humans, when we're upset and triggered by the decisions of another, we tend to get vindictive, but I don't believe that's any sort of solution. Punishment and a judgment that is a strong iron fist. I think that judgment should be something that benefits the offended and the offender, that teaches both sides and enables both sides to return to love, because, that age-old quote, hate cannot drive out hate, only love can. I'm sorry if this upsets you and it completely changes your opinion on me. If it does, then that's okay. I'm okay with that because, like I mentioned before, if I'm good with Source, then it's good with me. And when I find my center, this is where I land. And while I'm on the, all these triggering topics, when I mention this to my family, they don't always love it, but this is just how I view life, and it's just from personal experience. But I've seen and I've received very different perspectives from souls while doing energy work or readings or mediumship for souls on this matter. And from what I can understand is that not every soul is destined to live the life that we as humans expect us all to desire to have. We're not all meant to be carried fully to term, whether it's in the womb or to live a long life to old age. Some souls were meant to connect with another soul and then return to the ether for another purpose that is not on this earthly plane. And as always, take it or leave it. I know this can be a hard concept for me to discuss and for others to understand, and it may come off as one way or another, but this is just what my life has brought me and what I feel called to share. Because you are entitled to feel how you feel, to have the opinion that you have, I implore you to search for center within this argument and with any polarizing event that affects the collective. It's always a chance when we are pulled from center, when we are pulled to polarize ourselves and each other. It is always a moment for you to return to center. And that's really just why I brought this up. Maybe it is my guides or some side of me wants to trigger you to think more about this and to do more than just feel, to slow down and think critically about ourselves as a wide out view, rather than looking at everything from a magnifying glass or viewing it from just your world of suffering. While it is valid, there are all these other little bubbles around us of suffering that create this entire ocean that is humanity. And what I believe is a huge driving purpose for us is to drop in, find center, meditate when our emotions get the better of us, when any entity that's outside of us that may be trying to drive in darkness, it causes us to slow down and to stop. It's like you can either be a victim to this entity, or you can use it as a tool for your own development, which is going to in turn help the collective development. I didn't mention this in the last episode because I don't know. I didn't have a lot of time to explain, and I didn't want to, I guess, give this sense of doomsday or rushing. I guess I wanted us to naturally fall into this. But, I forget that with the nature of duality, the light and the dark polarizing energies are really strong. And we need to match them with light unifying energy. And when I have tuned in to this shift of consciousness that takes place every time we are presented with an emotionally harvesting, life-changing, government-induced decision and topic, this one in particular is a very important one. What my guides have shown me, and again, take it or leave it. I don't believe that my perspective and the messages I receive from spirit are the end all be all at all. But what they have shown me is the sort of energetic trajectory, the, I guess, predetermined events and fate and energy for 2023 is completely up in the air. And how we move through this portal of chaos is going to completely determine what happens in 2023. I read this document recently, and it was kind of and when I read these documents, they could be very true. They could be just somebody having a really deep philosophical moment within themselves. I don't know. But what the author claims is that they were speaking with a being that, quote unquote, plays with the dark elite forces, the forces that want us to be divided. And again, I don't really make my decision when I read these things. This is absolutely true or this is absolutely false. I become more of an observer. I find all these discussions just really interesting because it helps me find a place of center within my own duality. And it's so interesting because this particular document, this being of a more polarizing energy and within a polarizing agenda of separation and a sense of chaos, the way that they described their side and their view of why it needs to be this way, while I don't necessarily agree, I was like, yeah, that's really, I understand where they're coming from. This piece of me that craves separation and duality and to be disconnected or whatever it may be totally agrees. It's just so fascinating to me. But one thing that they said was that at the time of the quote unquote great harvest, actually let me read the quote, the end of it, because it really kind of made me think, fuck. All right, so here's the quote. Why do you think, and this is the being, the duality driven being, supposedly, that is speaking here. Why do you think the media is so important to us? You have, as a society, in your hypnotized, comatose state, given your free will consent to the state your planet is in today. You saturate your minds with the unhealthy dishes served up for you on your televisions that you are addicted to: violence, pornography, greed, hatred, selfishness, incessant bad news, fear, and terror. When was the last time you stopped to think of something beautiful and pure? The planet is the way it is because of your collective thoughts about it. You are complicit in your inaction every time you look the other way when you see an injustice. Your thought at the subconscious level of creation to the Creator is your allowance of these things to occur. In doing so, you are serving our purpose. It is very important to us that the polarization of this planet is negative at the time of the great harvest. That means service to self-oriented as opposed to positive service to others. We require a negative harvest, and you are doing a fine job of helping us attain our goal. We are very grateful. So when I read that, that's kind of when I started remembering, oh, right, they mentioned something about the summer solstice, and it's the opening of a portal. Would it have to do with this great harvest? And I don't know what this great harvest is at all, and I'm a little bit too, right now, emotionally attached to ideas around what that may or may not mean. It's when I'm emotionally attached to something, I am not really able to tune in or use muscle testing or anything like that. It's up to me. Here we go, broken record Stephanie here. It's up to me to find center within that particular topic, which I just haven't fully been able to get around to yet. And actually, that is something wonderful about meditation that I want you to carry with you, is that it's not a destination. It is not somewhere that you can find and then lose. It is a ever evolving journey. And as long as you return home, you're doing it right. Even if it's just for a second, as long as you can return home for 1 second, you are meditating. But anyways, whatever this great harvest may mean, personally, what I believe it is just a kind of a timeline jump into the next phase of what are the kind of collective consciousness vibration that our planet will hold. And what that means, I'm not entirely sure, but when I have tuned in to what does this brighter future, this light, this future where our collective has more light than darkness, what source has kind of showed me within that, it's not the end of pain and ego death and struggle. It's more of this acceptance of each struggle within, internally and without, externally. And it's so amazing. I'll include in the show notes, it's a short blog post that I wrote on it, and it's just what I've channeled from Source. This beautiful world where we are raised being prepared for the moment that, or the many moments that our ego will be threatened and fearful of dying, and we'll have to shed it. And we can shed it in whichever way we choose, whether it's alone or with somebody, whether it's physically, emotionally, verbally, whatever it may be. And there's just no moment of self-disdain or numbness, of lack of awareness, of hurting oneself or hurting others. Instead, it's like this coming of age, this moment of triumph within the darkness and loving your darkness. So many of us, we only search for the light within, and we only want to work for the light within. And that's really deeply stunting your growth as a human being, because you will always have this darkness within. And if you can learn to work with it and to speak with it and listen to it, then you can truly, truly step into the full multitude of your power. And when we finish in this new earth, quote unquote, new earth that I was shown, when we finish it, it's like this moment of sitting around the campfire together, and we're sharing our own times, our own ego deaths in the past, and just welcoming the person who has reemerged with love and connection and acceptance. And while I don't think that is the solution to any political issue, it's not going to solve world hunger and pain and death. And that's not what Source promised me. This new earth is not the resolution of pain and death, because that is the very nature of this earth school. It is why we come here, to experience these things for the progression of our development as souls. And I'm not going to get into why we want to develop and what happens after we kind of complete this dimensional phase, because I don't have the time and I don't know. That's something I would really need to organize and to channel alone and write down. But yeah, while I don't think it's going to solve everything, I do think that we would be living in a place with a lot more connection. If you listen to my podcast with the Whispers of Crystals and Cults with my good friend Brett McKee, I talk about how a client of mine came to me because her younger brother had passed, and it was a very, very sad situation. And something that I think she had seen a medium before coming to me, and something that he said to me was, stop worrying about me. Where I am, there is no disconnect. Disconnect is the pain maker. And disconnect is, unfortunately, a huge energy that we must face and work through and move through on this earthly plane that we decided to be here for. If we can, within this body and this life, reach a place of more connection, we can help the earth heal. We can help the collective heal. And I picture this new state of the world where we don't have to separate ourselves and climb up to the highest cave and in order to find meditation, enlightenment, bliss. It'll already be with us wherever we go. So before I really tie this podcast up and begin the guided meditation, I do want to leave you with a few of the stages of meditation. This is something that I learned in college. I took a yoga course at my school. So it's a little bit of what I remember from that, but also from my own personal experience. And I'm going to do a little bit of channeling here just to see if my guides or anyone wants to kind of contribute to this. So phase 1 is the settling. It is the physical settling within yourself. And that can be within stillness. Again, it could always be within stillness or movement. There is no right or wrong. We must settle and be in our body. We cannot leave our body unless we are fully in our body first. So phase 1 is the settling. Phase 2 is what I'm hearing is phase 2 is the acceptance. So we are required at this point to connect with the places of discomfort within our mind and within our body. Very often when we find stillness, the things that we may have been running away from start to catch up with us. But I want to tell you right now, the idea of the thing you are most afraid of is so much worse. I promise you, it's so much worse than the actual thing itself. This may require that you learn how to listen to your ego. If you want to listen to I think it's episode 1, The Whispers of Your Guides, Ancestors, and Higher Self, or maybe, it's episode 2. I talk about a way that I talk with my ego. And then also physical pain. If you are feeling physical pain somewhere in your body and you're really struggling, you're kind of resisting and pushing back at it, it is going to be difficult to get past this phase. And that's why I really started all of my meditation. That's why yoga exists. But that's why I started my initial really intentional meditation practice with movement, because it was very uncomfortable physically for me to sit still. And that's why, that's how yoga is completely set up. It's set up so that you can experience that very last pose, shavasana or corpse pose, and feel comfortable within your body during it. So that's phase 2. And then we move on to phase 3, which is resistance. And I think this step kind of blends into step 2, but you are going to experience a moment of resistance. I've been finding center. I've been meditating for a long time, and I still find this resistance of, you don't have time. My body doesn't feel good. I should be doing something else. This, that. And it's like, the moment, and in plant medicine, this is such a thing too. Like, the moment right before you let go, your ego is going to be screaming the loudest. All you have to do, in my opinion, is say, okay, I hear you. I choose to be here right now. So you're going to have to start to quiet yourself down. You're going to have to start to find a way to soothe and comfort yourself as I move to this next level. All you have to do is just validate that voice within, and it really will start to get quieter. Sometimes what I do is I physically hug and hold myself and say, I love you, or I am here, I am here. And let me tune in for step 4. Yes. Step 4 is when we can truly step into the practice of returning. And all of these steps, they're not necessarily linear, chronological. We go in and out, we go backwards, forwards, and that's okay. Step 4 is the return to center. You'll have little sparks, moments here and there, or maybe you'll feel it all at once, where you all of a sudden aren't finding so much resistance. You're finding more presence. You're feeling lighter in your body and in your mind. And you're just enveloped in the pure sensation of being here right now. And then the step after that, I think that's step 5. Yes, this is step 5, is the field. I get chills saying that. We finally can enter the field once and this doesn't necessarily happen within every meditation, and it doesn't necessarily happen for an extended period of time. It can, and when it is an extended period of time, it's wonderful. That field is what I was discussing earlier, where there is no obsession. There's no longer an obsession with wrongdoing and right doing. It just is. You just are. You don't have to become or to do. You just allow yourself to be. God, I don't know why talking about this gets me so emotional. It does hurt my heart to think some of us may live our entire lives without giving ourselves the space to feel this. So it is a little bit of sadness and compassion, but I think it's also me just remembering what that feels like. I don't find it always, but more and more I have been. And I think this podcast has really been an important tool in reaching there. For some, I don't know exactly how, but it does it for me. It's funny, sometimes I don't want to leave. And the great thing is we don't have to leave it. I think that for a long time was a limitation, that a state of mind is a place you enter and then walk away from, like a pair of pants. You put them on and then you take them off. But it doesn't have to be that way. And how I've gotten there is just by saying, I choose to carry this with me. Thank you for enabling me to carry this with me. And with that, I am going to close off this podcast and set myself up for the meditation portion. It won't be included within this episode. It'll be something that will publish on its own on this same day that this podcast will be published. It's only about 15 to 20 minutes, and I'm really excited to share this with you. Thank you so much for listening. If your mind is racing about these topics, reach out to me. Check the show notes. You'll find my Instagram and my TikTok, but I really discuss things more on my Instagram. I also have all my contacts on my website, www.schoolofwhispers.com. If you want to do energy work with me or meditation work, or reading, whatever it is all the many things I offer on my website, you can find all of that there. Thank you again for tuning in, and I'll be feeling your energy next week.